Hello.
Hello guys, Leah Michelle, Resistance Chicks. We are coming at you February 19th, 2017. We want to take you guys just a little bit off of current news. I mean, this is still totally current, but we want to explain some things to our viewers.
We want to do a currency
primer
for you all because right here I've got a video just a couple days ago. Rand Paul was on Tucker Carlson because he wants to get an audit of the Fed in. He and Representative Massey want to audit the Fed, and the idea is when you audit our Federal Reserve, which pretty much runs the entire globe.
And it's not federal, actually. It just uses that
You'll
name.
find that they have been tricking and conniving ever since the inception. Now, I want to give you a quick primer on how our Federal Reserve and bank was started. It was in the early 1900s. Woodrow Wilson was a nobody, and he was picked by the head bankers, and they pushed him through in a really weird election with two other amazing guys, William Howard Taft and Teddy Roosevelt, which either of them would have easily been elected. But they brought Teddy Roosevelt back to fight, and they made it this three-way battle so that somehow this pansy who suffered from strokes and all kinds of health problems, Woodrow Wilson, got elected. Now, if you research, this is really important for you to understand why we have this and why we have this and why
we no longer have silver and gold
this again.
As our currency.
Okay, so Woodrow Wilson he was just a patsy for the bankers who got him to pass a law. And Google the Creature of Jekyll Isle, how these bankers went and they were going to control themselves basically, and they set up a system and they called it the Federal Reserve Act.
But it has nothing to do with the federal government. We're going to keep saying that.
Our Constitution gives only Congress the right to print gold and silver coin, okay? Never would they have ever agreed to this.
They're promissory notes.
They're not real, okay?
Now, it used to be that it would say, and we probably have some of these around here, but we don't, the silverbacks, where it was literally redeemable for gold and silver, usually the silver ones, and those dollar bills are really valuable. They look a little bit different than these ones because these are fake money. It's fake money. It's real money, but it's fake money. Monopoly money. You could walk into a bank and you could hand them your dollar bill and you could say, now I would like to have my silver or my gold in return. That's the way that they worked kind of like a check. All right, so this is how I want you guys to understand this absurdity, how this came about. Imagine all of a sudden, all of our checks, the paper check, because it's paper, became the currency. That is what happened when gold and silver ceased being the
So you no longer actually had to have the money in the bank. You could just randomly write all these checks, and that's what the bankers did. So they got this Federal Reserve Act so they could print off more of these, because they're just paper, than use these. So in order to make this work, they had to make it illegal for you to have gold and silver on your personage.
So they did that, and they actually started confiscating.
So they made you go into the bank, and instead of being able to take this and go in and get silver, you took this in and they got this.
This is the biggest sham and scam in all of American history, that the Federal Reserve was able to get the people to do this. And then what does that lead to? That leads to credit, right? Nothing. It used to be when you were
a pretty pink card
on credit. That's mine. When you had credit, it was more of the general store guy. You know, you go in and you buy something on credit, and it's a person-to-person deal.
Right.
Now we have these big conglomerates, and so what I want you guys to understand that what they can do with gold and silver is a tangible, desirable thing. Okay, this is a commodity. All right, this is something that people would like to wear. All right, it's desirable. You can't invent this. Okay, it gets mined out of the ground or whatever, and it's a finite amount in the world. That doesn't do well when people want to impose inflation and steal from the American people. The only way that they can do that is through the American dollar. I don't know if you guys realize that for how many hundred years there was no inflation?
200 years.
There was zero inflation. A dollar equal to dollar equal to dollar was always the same. Okay? Paper money made inflation possible.
Through the roof. Through the roof. Now, you can do your own research on this. Just let you know that Trump is great and the president is great, but our economy is going to crash because we are trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. Now,
the greatest businessman that ever lived could never turn this around.
Many of you have heard of Greece and how it went through, and I'll just play a tiny little video here, how it went through.
It was forced to go into the euro.
Right. This is what happens when you go into a lot of debt and you don't have
the ability to print more money. Here in the United States, we can just print more and more money. But when Greece was entered into the European Union and they were forced to join the euro, they were no longer able to print their own money.
This would be the scene in America had we not continually been able to print more and more money.
Right. So the only reason that America was able to go into the mass amount of debt that we have, everybody said, how did this happen? How did we get into all this debt? Because we stopped using gold and silver. Gold and silver being our currency would have kept lawmakers and politicians in check from overspending.
Right. Exactly. So we've had,
this is my wheelhouse, by the way.
We've had different financial crashes throughout our history, and the answer has always been just print more money. And actually what it is it's counterfeit. So on behalf of all Americans, I would like to humbly apologize to all the people in the world, because we have not had to suffer at all, because our lawmakers have made sure to take care of the American people, but basically they're taking care of themselves. And in order to stay in power, they made sure to print off enough money for the rest of us and have enough government programs for the poor of the poor. Otherwise, in all these, in 9/11, we had a huge crash. And in 2008, Michelle and I firsthand got to experience what it was like when the markets are in turmoil. And I'll give you a little bitty glimpse into it. Our grandmother died. She had a lot of money. She had a lot of stocks. We don't have a lot of money right now. You want to know why? Because it all went to poop. It went right through the fan the year she died. And I thank God for it. Because we would have relied on it and we would have become just like those criminals, okay? We were a GM family. And many of you don't know that General Motors went belly up. Why is there a problem in Detroit? Why is there a problem in Michigan? Why are there houses that are growing like vines, like some sort of ancient Oriental,
like a bad movie?
Like movie, like
the saying used to be, the way GM goes is the way of the country. And so what happened when GM went belly up? Nobody took it to heart that, oh my gosh, that is a mirror reflection of what is happening in our country. We just thought it was GM. We thought it was all these other, automotive companies.
So my grandma, actually, she lost a third of it in the 2001, okay? And that was, she had gained so much during the dot-com boom. And then she lost a whole bunch. And then she felt poor, which she wasn't. And then this happened, and we had to help our evil Procter & Gamble uncle, I don't know if you can put that on television, but oh well.
Why not?
Grow through the estate. And that's another long story, but we watched, it was like God wanted us to see it all happening. We watched him not sell the stocks, and we're like, you need to sell, the stock market's dropping, you need to sell, the stock market's dropping. And we literally would turn on the television, we'd be like, there goes 20 grand, there goes 30 grand, there goes 40 grand, there goes 50 grand. What is... Can you imagine this happening in a matter of months? We were a GM family. And finally, when it was all said and done, it was done. The stocks went from here to nothing. And so Obama had to bail out these companies and these banks.
He didn't have to. He just did. That's what normally happens when a company goes belly up, the company goes belly up.
But if the companies went belly up and the banks went belly up, we would have had the riots like in Greece, because and you know what? That would have been the right thing.
Right.
It's the right thing because we don't have this.
Now it's being held up like a house of cards. It's
These are
silver dimes.
Silver dimes.
Right now, silver is pricing around $18. It changes every day. It changes throughout the day.
We need to just not audit the Fed. We need to end the Fed. And eventually our currency is going to die. Eventually the stock markets and everything are going to collapse. And it's going to happen, and we don't know when it's going to happen. We just know it's going to happen because you
can't sustain it.
Because of you seeing what's happening in Greece, and you're seeing what's happening with countries when you make up currencies. The euro is a made up currency.
Right.
All right. These are currencies that are made up. So let's listen to
when the Pilgrims came over here. And they started trading with the Indians. There were different currencies, but they were corn. They were wheat. There was a shell. I forget what it's called. The Wampanoag Indians thought was very valuable, so they started using that currency because that was the currency.
Intrinsic value.
And it had intrinsic value because it was, again, a commodity. And throughout history, currencies have almost always been a commodity of some sort. Every government that has ever started printing money, fake money, like paper money like this, the economy has collapsed. I don't think that there's ever been one that sustained it. So, and my mom also wanted us to point out that this is a regular quarter. And they do this so that it looks like the real thing. And it kind of gives you that feel. There's no reason to make this out of some fake, metal or whatever that has no value other than to make people feel like that's how we got, kind of transferred over
this one.
to this.
This is a silver coin. It's got the Queen of England on it.
All right, let's get Rand Paul right to it.
Okay.
For years now, under President Obama,
he's been trying to audit the Federal Reserve.
Of course, under an ordinary Republican administration, it would be pretty unlikely, but perhaps he can pull it off under President Trump,
We're
who
hoping.
has endorsed the idea. Senator Paul has introduced an audit the Fed bill into the Senate and is campaigning hard for the Republican majority to pass it while they can. Senator Paul joins us here in Washington. Senator, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
So why would we want to audit the Fed? Why is this of concern to the average person who's not a banker?
I think an easier question is why wouldn't we want to audit the Fed? I mean, it's about transparency. It's about knowing what your government does. The Constitution.
How many times have we heard, can we see those tax returns? Can we see the tax returns? Why isn't he giving us the tax returns? He's not giving us the tax returns. And we're telling the Fed, why can't we audit you? Why can't we audit you? Why can't we audit you? Why can't we audit you?
It gives the power to Congress to mint and coin money. We sort of transferred that power to the Federal Reserve in 1913, but I think we ought to know what they're doing. The dollar's lost 96% of its purchasing power. What does that mean? Your prices have gone up every year. What was once worth $1
exponentially
now takes $24 to buy what was once worth $1.
And that's the result of policies made at the Federal Reserve.
Absolutely. They print up the money, but it's sort of a codependency, and this is a dirty little secret. You need to have a Federal Reserve if you're going to have a $20 trillion debt. Why? They buy your debt. But they buy your debt by printing up money. So you can't have an enormous debt if you don't have a Federal Reserve printing up the money. But there are ramifications, and the ramifications are higher prices. So a lot of senior citizens will say, well, gosh, they tell me there's no inflation and I don't get an increase in my Social Security check, but the prices really are going up for them at the grocery store. So it all depends on how you measure inflation.
So there's been a massive amount of wealth floating around over the past 10 years, but famously, most of it seems to have stuck to a relatively small number of people. It's one of the factors behind this election, I think most would agree. How much of that has to do with Fed policy?
Well, the interesting thing is, everybody, particularly Democrats, talk about income inequality, but I think the Federal Reserve has a lot to do with it because people get richer who already have money. So you and I might have to go out and earn it, or if you're a school teacher, you got to work to earn your money. But if you have a bunch of money and you park it at the Fed, they pay you to keep it there. So we actually use taxpayer money to pay people just to have it sitting at the Federal Reserve.
What does the average person get out of the Fed's policy?
Well, you could say they get to, the government borrows an enormous amount of money, so we get stuff we don't pay for, but we also get something that we don't want, and that is the recessions and the depressions that come about. There have been more recessions and depressions, bad things, since we got the Fed than there were before the Fed. And they gave us the Fed, they said, we're going to have less depression. Well, the Great Depression came right after the Fed, and all of the downturns we've had have been with the Fed in existence.
To be fair, it's been 100 years, though. I mean, it's a long time.
Well, yeah, but a lot of downturns have happened. If you want to look at the most recent one, the crisis where the banking system was teetering on the brink in 2008, that was caused because the Federal Reserve kept the interest rates low and people kept building houses. Instead, what should happen, if a bunch of people are building houses and you and I go out and we're all buying houses, the price of money, the interest rate should go up, and then the economy will slow down as the interest rates go. But what happens if the Federal Reserve keeps the interest rates low permanently? Then what happens is you get a boom, and people are building houses like crazy, but they build too many houses because no one told them to stop building. Why did the Federal Reserve keep the interest rates low? To pay for a $20 trillion debt. If interest rates were to go back where they were historically, 5% or even 7%, the government can't pay for their debt.
So Janet Yellen, who runs the Fed, is against this. She said auditing the Fed would politicize monetary policy. Leaving aside the question of why that's bad, I mean, shouldn't elected
Congress
representatives
is
have a
allowed
role
to know what's
in
going
our
on with the
economy?
money.
It seems pretty political to me already. Do you think it is?
Well, it makes me so mad that I introduced further legislation to make it illegal for the Federal Reserve to lobby us. We pay them, we appointed them, and we're supposed to oversee them, and they're lobbying against transparency, they're lobbying against our oversight. It's insulting. The main lobby against auditing the Fed is the Fed.
And who else? I mean, you don't...
It is unconstitutional. They had to make a constitutional amendment to even make the Federal Reserve legal.
don't have majority support in the Senate for this. Why would
actually, no, that's not true. We had 53 votes for it. We had
Really?
51 Republicans and 2 Democrats voted for it. Bernie Sanders voted for it.
I know that.
Amy Baldwin did, and 51 out of 53 Republicans.
What's the opposition to this rooted in? I just want to give a fair hearing to their side. What's their argument?
Some see that the Fed pays for this massive debt, and they love big government, and they know that we have to have a big debt to have big government, and they have to pay for it, so they don't want to mess with the Fed because right now it's able to accommodate
They
this
know if they
enormous
audit
debt.
it
One of the reasons I
upturn
want
it.
oversight, though, is that I think a lot of people get hurt in the downturn. So in 2008, when the housing market went bust, I blame that on the Federal Reserve, and we're right in the middle of another boom. Anybody seen the stock market lately? It is a boom, just like the real estate boom of 2008, and it will come to an end. I wish I knew exactly when, so I could give your viewers some investment advice, but it will come to an end. There will be a correction. We have a huge bubble in the stock market created by easy money, free money. Everybody's got money. Federal Reserve will hand you bouquets of money. But there will be repercussions, and that'll be the downturn. There will be a response or reaction to all of this extra money.
So really quick, we're almost out of time. Elliot Abrams, who served in the last Bush administration, is under consideration to become Deputy Secretary of State. You wrote this: crack the door to admit Elliot Abrams and the neocons will become scurrying in by the hundreds.
Yeah, I think someone who was a never-Trumper, Abrams was a never-Trumper. He was disparaging and said to the president, said things about the president that he would never vote for him. He said the chair that Washington and Lincoln sat in, that Trump wasn't fit to sit in it. Someone who was a never-Trumper should never be in a Trump State Department. I mean, for goodness sakes. But he also represents things that Donald Trump doesn't. President Trump has been different than many. He said that nation building hasn't worked. When he said that, Elliot Abrams came forward and said, he's absolutely wrong. Nation building is what we need to do. Regime change, Iraq War. Elliot Abrams was one of the key architects of the Iraq War.
Yes.
We don't need people with the failed policies back in. Donald Trump does represent something new and different in foreign policy, and I think a welcome relief from the neocons. So I hope he doesn't appoint somebody who doesn't really agree with him.
I'm baffled by it, I gotta be honest. Senator Paul, thanks a lot for
Thank
doing
you.
it.
Here's the thing, and Lee and I are going to continue to bring these kinds of things to you. And listen, you just have to pray, because if Trump makes decisions like this, we are going to call him out. We're hoping that he doesn't appoint this guy.
So I wanted to show this video of
Oh my gosh, this
Nigel
back to the
Farage
currency. This is
doing
hilarious.
a mock burial.
This is from 2011, before
of the
Brexit.
Greece- I believe it's of the bankrupt currency in Brussels, and
Their casket represents the euro.
funeral.
And these guys have like a straight face. Look at the straight. I love that Nigel Farage is a showman. I mean,
So the euro is very much like our dollar,
yeah.
and that the big bankers have the euro, and they can print and print and print and bail people out just like we can in America.
Now, doesn't
There's a
Farage
massive change over the
explain
last
it
few
here?
months, and opinion polls now show that the euro, as it's currently constructed, is dead. and that actually the European project itself is now under very, very serious threat, as tens of millions of people, particularly the under 30s in Europe, reject the idea of being governed by centralised, undemocratic bureaucracies. The leaders are unanimously wrong again. They've been wrong about Greece from the very start. She should never have been allowed to join the euro in the first place. She wasn't suited to it. They were wrong to bail her out first time. They're wrong to try and bail her out the second time. And if the Greek Parliament on Tuesday accepts this package, then this time next year I'll be talking to you and there'll be a third bailout. The fundamentals are that Greece is now bust. Her debts are so big she cannot possibly hope to repay them. At some point there is going to be a default. And whilst I accept that that's unpleasant because European banks, French ones in particular, are going to lose money, it's better to take the loss now rather than to force an indebted country to take another 120 billion euros worth of debt. It is
but as another 120 billion, it doesn't matter because they just keep printing it. It's not real. Do you know what happens when they print an extra dollar? Okay.
Now they receive the benefits of that
The
first.
banks receive.
They do not receive. It's not inflation to them. They
Right.
get it's like getting the skim off the top.
Right. So the bankers
skimming.
get the skim off the top, and we're left with like water at the end.
It trickles down, and it just keeps every time it goes through and gets processed and kind of laundered. Essentially, it devalues and devalues and devalues, and by the time it gets to us, your groceries now cost twice as much as they did last week.
So if we were dealing with silver dollars, if the euro was dealing with silver, you wouldn't be able to bail out Greece for $120 billion, and Greece wouldn't have had to fail. Economies like this, you have to understand that failing only happens with huge natural disasters.
Yeah.
And things like that. This is men with suits and ties playing with people's lives.
Right, hard-earned money.
And hard-earned work. The work of your hands is valuable. This has no intrinsic value. If I go and I work for somebody for 8 hours in a day, that has value to it.
The paper money is fake, and then they pay you with this.
I think that if there was one thing that we wanted to come to, we do a lot of stories, okay? But
kidding.
this is this is it. This is the conspiracy theory to end all. If you want to know what's wrong with our nation, what's wrong with the world, it's the
money.
globalists with the fake money, with the FDR and our New World Order under FDR, he called it the New Deal. And when I was talking about Woodrow Wilson, what I didn't tell you was that in 1921 he suffered a debilitating stroke. Okay. And he was locked away. He didn't lock himself away. He was gone, mentally, physically gone. And his second wife, who was actually kind of thrown on him by other bankers around him, covered all the correspondence, and his doctor.
She forged his signature on so many documents that never even made it to him.
One of the biggest fake news stories of all times was when a reporter went in and he got a Pulitzer Prize for this interview saying, soon I'm going to be out, running around and he's going to beat me in a race or something like that, Woodrow Wilson will. And he was still not even mentally there. And that was the biggest fake news story of the time. And they were even trying to push him for a third term. Because it was just ridiculous because they were able to manipulate him. The bankers were able to get the Federal Reserve Act, and immediately after the Federal Reserve Act, they got the income tax because you can't print money without having the source coming in.
Right.
And so the same year they do the Federal Reserve Act, they get the income tax. And
Which is unconstitutional.
Exactly. And then you've got the New World Order really, really taking hold there. Council of Foreign Nations. This is our basic money primer, and this is what gets all conspiracy theories going. This is what all of you should know inside and out already.
Right.
If you don't, go ahead and hit us with your questions. We'll try to answer them. This is what we study on a daily basis. This is what we prepare for. This is, if you're going to do anything, buy gold and silver. I suggest gold is way too high right now.
Yeah,
buy silver.
So, and you know what else? And so just to give you guys a couple of tips, if you are going to buy
to not live in fear,
precious
but
metals for savings or whatever, if there were to be what our friends like to call a zombie apocalypse, something that is completely debilitating, the power grid goes out, whatever, people are starving.
not if when.
Yeah. All right, so what you're going to want to have is tradable commodities such as silver dimes. To carry around a very large piece of gold, it's not going to be divisible. You're not going to be able to use it, and buying it right now is going to put you kind of under... I mean, you can do it. Go ahead and buy the gold if you feel led to do so, but I really believe that having a lot of small money, because...
It's called junk silver.
It is called junk silver. And a lot of it's been worn off, and so that's why you can kind of get it cheap regardless.
We stock up with wheat.
Yeah, different
necessities,
things
just
that
in case.
used to be treated as a tradable commodity. That's what you can be stocking up on. But you guys really, if you have your savings in a 401k or you have your savings in the stock market, that's kind of, to me, a no-brainer. Get it out now. But if you have your savings under your mattress in this paper money or in a bank, you guys, when this happens, and I know you go in there, you love to see that FDIC promise that says, oh, we will back and support. Listen, if the collapse happens to everyone, no one's getting anything. You're not getting your backed up to $200,000. You're just not going to get it. And you know what else they're going to do? They're going to lock down your safety deposit box. So if you do buy these precious metals, unfortunately, you can't keep them in your safety deposit box, because when this whole thing goes south, they're going to lock it down, and they actually kind of have the right, I think, almost, depending on the bank, to repossess. You got to read your fine print, what is inside that box, because they own it and they can lock it down. So listen, there's a lot of things that you guys need to know. We don't like to call ourselves preppers, but I do believe in being prepared. So,
it's just a writing on the wall, like Grandpa says. I'm not saying anything that some of the greatest minds in the financial realm aren't already saying. So,
right, get out now while you can. Get out while the getting's good.
Like, subscribe,
comment. Don't forget to ring the bell for notifications on Mass Faith 3 and Resistance Chick, so that you get notifications for every video that we put out. You will get an email, and find us on Facebook, where we can interact with you guys there on a daily basis. And don't forget to share these on your social media pages. And it is not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. We love you guys. God bless. Thanks for sticking around to our monetary episode.
Pennies from heaven. Every time it rains, it rains.
I was cold all alone, no place for home every day, so afraid, but you called my name.